We Oh, brilliant. Recordings in progress. Hopefully everybody's okay with that. Right, we're going to get kicked off because we've got a brilliant session this morning. So we are recording. Please let us know if you're if there's anything that you're concerned about with that, but I think we're all pretty much used to it. Good heavens. My name is Simone Robinson, and I am very proud to be the chair of the Inspiring Women's Network within the Cambridgeshire Chambers of Commerce. It is a voluntary role that I've taken on with huge pride. The Inspiring Women's Network is, as it says, about and for inspiring women, but not just women. We are looking to address interesting subjects, challenging topics, and take an extra and get an extra depth for people and bring I'm so sorry, bring women in the workplace together, whatever their industries might be, and help and support each other. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the Inspiring Network, can I please encourage you to contact Sadie at the Chamber, or to look me up on the good old LinkedIn, and please get in touch with me. That would be absolutely brilliant. Now, in my day job, I'm also very proud to be interim managing director of a company called the Oak Ridge Centre. We are a training and development company looking after leadership and management training. And today I am very delighted to introduce my colleague, Ben. Ben Miller has worked in many different industries, digital media, technology, advertising and financial services. And within those industries, he's held roles in marketing, digital transformation, insight and innovation. Ben is co-founder of the Latitude Project, which reframes shared social problems as opportunities to experiment, to learn and transform together. Ben is interim chair of Healthwatch Suffolk and a careers and skills advisor for the New Anglia LEP as well. Ben is a co-facilitator and speaker on an organisation called Better Conversations for Leadership, and is a diversity and thought speaker and blogs within his blog, A Life of Why. Now then, let's have a look at our subject that we're going to be looking at today. Should we trust our gut instincts? Now, all of you, I am sure, I'll probably get a little hands up here if anybody's willing to show me their hand. Have you ever had that funny feeling in your tummy, and it might not be your tummy because goodness knows where it is, when you've had to make a decision? It could be at work or home, when you've met somebody, when you've been in an environment, when you it's either a people or a situation. There's just something inside that either makes you feel positive or negative. I've got a hand up. Anybody else? Great. Okay, so today we're going to be asking questions and having a look at why that is. Now, let's start first off with a question for you. Sadie, could we have the first poll, please? And we are going to be interactive today, everybody. So please, can you let me know, what do you think? Should we trust our gut reaction or our gut instincts? Fantastic. This is lovely. We're only going to keep this going for a short time. So absolutely brilliant. Look at that. Wonderful. Absolutely superb. Excellent. Well, that's quite close, isn't it? So yes, always, and yes, sometimes. Brilliant. Thank you very much. That gives us a great basis to start on there. So that's superb. I would encourage you during our thank you. That's superb. Can everybody else see the results, or is it just me? That's hilarious. Okay, there we go. Sorry, it's not hilarious, but I think it's funny. So can you see those now, guys? So we've got 59% saying yes sometimes and 41% saying yes always. So really great. Interesting to see how we started the day. That is superb. Brilliant. Right. Has that gone from your screens now? Yes. Okay. Superb. Lovely. Right. Ben, could I ask you to begin? I'm going to share my screen, and once again, I'm going to ask if I do that, just 1 second for me, everybody. I'm so sorry. This is not my skill set, I have to say. Can you see? Can you see a brain? Yes. Oh, I love this nodding. Please continue. That's brilliant. Okay, that's great. Ben, I would like to ask if you could tell us a little bit about the brain. What role does that play? And yeah, just give us a brief introduction on how powerful it is, really.
Yeah, thanks, Simone. First of all, thank you for inviting me here, and nice to meet you all. And hopefully, we'll get to have a few questions at the end. So, yeah, really grateful to be part of this inspiring women's event and supporting you as well, Simone. But yeah, so this is an interesting subject and question, and it's about the gut. So why do we start with the brain? Well, I think that the kind of brain basically mediates our experience. It kind of mediates what we sense, what we feel, what we think, and how we kind of understand both our body and our environment. But it's the most complex thing in the universe. Made up of approximately 86 billion neurons, each with up to about 10,000 connections with other neurons, and there's a huge amount of complexity, and there's a huge amount of unknowns when it comes to the brain. We've got lots of neurochemicals, we've got lots of hormones, and obviously all of these interact to shape how we feel and how we sense. And so the scientists really think that the brain is considered a final frontier of scientific discovery. And so if there's a huge amount left still to discover, and everything is mediated through our brain and through consciousness, there's lots of question marks about actually how certain we can be about a lot of things. So I think that was a kind of really just quite an important place to start, and we'll unpack that a little bit further now, I think.
Brilliant, thank you, Ben. Now, I believe that. Oh, is that right? Yes, there we go. I believe that many of us will be familiar with there being different parts of the brain, and I know we're going to look at the two parts later. But can you explain to us about the different states of our brain, please?
Yeah. So please don't take this as a literal description of how the brain evolved and is constructed, because there's lots of overlap. But there was a scientist in the 60s who basically came up with something called the triune brain, and it's a bit like a thinking about the brain through three layers, if you like. So you've got the oldest, which is more our kind of reptilian brain, if you like, which was really associated with fight, flight, or freeze, and automatic biological processes. And unlike parts of our body, so humans used to have fur. When we stop needing certain aspects of our body, evolution tends to get rid of it. But it's a bit different with the brain, that actually the brain builds upwards, and it doesn't replace what came before, but actually adds to it and integrates it. So the kind of emotional limbic system basically matured as we became more social creatures, and it allowed us to form bonds and groups and kind of connections with each other. And so then after that is our kind of prefrontal cortex. These basically kind of were the last to mature, and these allow us really to stand back from the immediacy of experience of life and to make decisions and problem solve and to think to the future. But they don't work in isolation. The information really goes as much from bottom up to top down. So we need to kind of be mindful that actually, our instincts, our emotions are every bit as important as our capacity to think.
Thank you, Ben. So, Sadie, we've got another poll. Now, I did promise you we were going to be interactive today, so you've got to keep on it, guys. You've got to keep awake for me. So our next poll activity, what kind of brain state do you feel you're in today? Are you in an executive state right now at this time while we're here together? What do you think? Are you in a survival state, emotional state, or an executive state? I'm not sure if you can hear, I've got the window cleaners have arrived behind me. Oh my gosh, if it's not a pet or an Amazon man, bless them. It's lovely, isn't it? Okay, brilliant. That's fantastic. Let's keep going. There's a couple of you that haven't responded as yet. Interesting. That's great. Okay, so we've got those 3 sets. Shall I, actually, it might be useful to go back to the gap to the side. Okay, I'm going to share these results. There we go. Right, so we've got 56% of us are in an emotional state, 33 in an executive state, and 11% in a survival state. Really interesting, bit of a cross section there, which is great. Absolutely super. Thank you very much indeed.
And
Right.
I think just to
Yeah,
that
go for it.
just to that this point, which is you know, our kind of gut instincts and our thoughts and our feelings and our actions are really shaped by our physiology. So if we're in a state of fear and insecurity or anger or love, that tends to shape how we think, you know, whether it's positive or negative. And likewise with our gut instinct, if we're in a perpetual state of fear and anxiety and insecurity, our instincts we might be more in tune with the instincts which point towards that kind of emotional state. So, you know, it all kind of works together, I think, which is an important thing to think about.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ben. So Ben, many of us will have heard of the term fight or flight. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Well, I think if we go back to where we spent most of our condition, humans spent a huge amount of time just roaming in the savannah, in small groups, hunting, gathering, foraging, where life was pretty simple. It was split into kind of two states, if you like, you know, to eat, you know, which might involve more of the kind of the fighting aspect, but also not be eaten. And so it's just as important really to kind of eat, but also be wary of predators. And if you think about the kind of nature of our instincts and our attention, between these two states, one is kind of very, you know, immediate, instinctual, you know, to grab some food just as we kind of see it in the corner of our eye, whereas, you know, perhaps not be eaten, you need a more broad, open, kind of sustained awareness. So rather than focusing on something very specific, you're looking over the horizon. And so kind of simultaneously, you know, humans have basically developed around these kind of two ways of attending to the world, and we'll kind of explore them a little bit further in the kind of modern context, but I think that's just helpful to kind of understand. Yeah.
Great. I have to apologise, everybody, because Ben's slides were brilliant. They were brilliant before Madam here managed to mess them up. And he had lovely antelopes dancing across this slide, focusing and eat, and I've managed to delete them. So goodness knows where the antelopes are, and I apologise for the lack of antelopes.
They've been eaten, haven't they, unfortunately?
Ben, we've also, I'm sure everybody in the room has also heard about, we spoke earlier about two sides of the brain. I'm wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit bit more about that as well, please.
Yeah, so mention about the three brain metaphor, which could also be, you know, considered the, you know, maybe the gut brain, the heart brain, and the brain, if you like. But actually, there's, rather than just, you know, bottom up, top down, it's also important to think about left to right. And pop psychology basically did this a disservice in the 60s and 70s, and suggested that the left half of the brain was male, the right female, or, you know, language versus creativity, or emotions versus logic. And actually, you know, both hemispheres are involved in everything, but this kind of scientists were really asking the wrong questions. It's not really what they do, but it's how they do the same things differently. And so one of the kind of key differences was alluded to in the previous slide, that you know, the left hemisphere has a very kind of narrow window, a very precise window, which allows us to kind of grasp things in the world. It allows us to actually kind of grapple with things, whereas the right hemisphere is that kind of more broad, flexible, open, sustained way of seeing kind of the kind of global picture. So one of the big differences here, which you might be familiar with, is the difference between people who see and focus on the details versus those that see the big picture. And so we have a tendency maybe to rely on one hemisphere or the other. And quite often they work together in harmony. So an example of this really might be, say, a kind of musician where the idea might be created in the right hemisphere, and then it's passed over to the left hemisphere to basically refine, make all of the elements kind of really distinct. But then what you need to do then is to pass it over to the right hemisphere to basically integrate it into a piece of music with all of the other elements which come together, which turn sounds into an amazing song, or just kind of isolated components of an orchestra into something which is a symphony. And so there's this kind of dynamic really between our hemispheres that we kind of have, which is happening subconsciously. And I think just one of the kind of good ways to think about the differences is the headings here. The left hemisphere allows us to use and manipulate the world, whereas the right hemisphere allows us to understand and relate to it in its fullest context. And so, kind of the left hemisphere basically controls our right side of the body. The right controls the left. And so, if you're 9 out of 10 of us here will be right-handed, it's because the left hemisphere is all about precision. And so, our right hand is kind of more precise than our left hand. But, what our left hand does is that kind of stability, that grounding, if we're working with both hands. And so that's a good way to think about the right hemisphere as well. It's the kind of grounding of experience. It's kind of reality, if you like, whereas kind of left just focuses on small details. So I hope that kind of gives a little bit of context as to why it's important that we think about these two hemispheres.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. So Ben, is it actually our brain that controls our consciousness?
Well, yeah. Well, I think that our kind of conscious mind is things we're aware of in kind of moment to moment experience. And one thing I didn't mention in the previous slide was that our brain is asymmetrical, and it's also twisted. So both sides aren't equal, and they're kind of connected by the corpus callosum, which is a bunch of fibers which most of them are inhibitory, which means they stop each other working. And this kind of asymmetry kind of plays out everywhere really in the mind, both structurally but also functionally as well. So our conscious experience, things which we're aware of, are incredibly small. And I've kind of used this this number here that our brain is processing an incredible amount of information every second. We simply couldn't function in the world if we were consciously aware of it. So all of this is happening really at an unconscious level. And so you might have heard of an author and professor called Jonathan Haidt, and he talks about the elephant and the rider as a way to describe the relationship between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And so, the rider thinks that they're in control because they've got the reins, they're sitting up high, they can see where they're going. And this is our kind of rational, self-conscious, verbal, analytic mind. But in reality, it's the elephant which is in control of where it wants to go. And so, there's lots of talk about self-control and regulation and everything else, but ultimately we'll wear ourselves out because actually the elephant has a lot more kind of energy and motivation and drive to take us where it wants. And so what we need to try and do really is try and harmonize this kind of process, this relationship between the kind of rational and the intuitive elements of ourselves, because the rational mind can, if you like, kind of create options and open up slightly different pathways, slightly better pathways for us to take. But actually, it's how do we kind of work together, you know, our conscious and unconscious minds, which will put us more in harmony, if you like.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And so, Ben, I mean, in relation to what you've spoken to about so far, I mean, how does that all impact on our energy and on our energy levels, I suppose?
Yeah, so I mentioned there. So if you think about the elephant and trying to hold back an elephant is pretty difficult, and you know, we only have to look at the kind of brain to kind of start digging into why it is so difficult, why we have you know, challenges with willpower and self-control and emotional regulation. You know, our brain is a small percentage of our body weight, but uses an incredible amount of energy. And so, you know, the kind of staggering difference between the human brain at rest, the kind of watts it uses versus the modern, you know, lifestyle, which induces an incredible amount of, you know, energy consumption. We're starting to see the effects of that in society with, you know, stress, burnout, mental health issues, and just everything else. And you know, this is just one of many culprits, and just one of many ways to think about, you know, what's causing it. And our prefrontal cortex, the, you know, the rational mind, the decision maker of last resort, uses an incredible amount of energy. And so all of our kind of switching between tasks, our self-control, our kind of, you know, our regulation, you know, not reacting to instincts and emotions, we can only do so much of it. You know, again, it's our elephant that we can only keep that elephant under control for so long. So it's kind of important to think about, you know, embodied thinking is less effortful. And so actually societies progress when we stop being stuck in our heads. And so there's an element to say that actually, you know, we need to move to this more embodied knowing, and actually try and get out of our heads a little bit for, you know, for everybody's sake, you know, individually, but also collectively.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Now, what we'd like to do now, I mean, we know that over the last 18 months, all of us, every single person in this room and every single person pretty much in the world has been impacted by a very, very challenging time. And our energy levels have been affected by that. So I would be very grateful if in the chat you could let us know, what is it about work? What work activities have you missed in the last 18 months? So pre-COVID, what work activities were you doing that you've actually missed? If you could pop those into the chat for us, just to have a look at what things that we used to do that we maybe not able to or not doing now out of choice have you missed recently? So yeah, jump some ideas in the chat there. I'll give you an example. I actually miss driving to work. I never ever thought that I would miss driving to work. Because it used to be a schlep and you know, like a real challenge, but actually I miss the thinking time. I miss that thinking time to go to and from wherever it was I was going. So have a little think about that and pop some ideas in for us, please. Give you 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Traveling and physically meeting colleagues, absolutely. Meeting people, anything social, absolutely. Yep, visiting other people, look them in the eyes. That's right. So it is that people factor, definitely. Yeah, the face-to-face and casual conversations, superb, absolutely. Just what I think the Americans call them those water cooler moments. I don't know if anybody's, have we got water coolers? I'm sure there is such a thing, but I can't remember ever actually seeing one. I'm not sure about you, but yeah. Oh, I see, traveling to Europe, Claire. Absolutely, that's right. That's right. And isn't this incredible that so much of our comments are about people, well, except for mine, where I was on my own. That's so funny. Generally getting and giving personal attention to each other. Absolutely. Fascinating. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, really, really important. Then Simon Sinek, who I'm sure many of us have heard about, claims that despite the advice we get, and the data, the multitude of information that we can receive, sometimes things just don't feel right. I've got a note here to ask you about showers. Maybe not your shower, but about showers. Could you let us know a little bit about that? I'm going to just change the slide if I can find the mouse. There we go. There you go.
Yeah. So a lot of our work, really is problem solving, and having ideas and solving problems is something which we should encourage. And yeah, I think that there's something to learn from where ideas happen. And yeah, I'm sure maybe feel free to add some other ones into the sort of chat, that where do you have your best ideas, and what are the circumstances and environment you kind of think clearly. And showers is one of the more common ones, and it's definitely one of those for me, probably a suite of different places, which isn't a desk, isn't an open plan office, isn't staring at my email, where I get ideas. And I think that why showers work is that it's all about kind of softening this focus, and moving from our prefrontal cortex into our kind of more embodied kind of mind, if you like, where we're more relaxed, we've got a healthy natural distraction, and rather than this rational mind which is very narrow and kind of fixed, actually having a slightly more open, flexible mind basically allows ideas to get through this kind of filter. And it's kind of showers using your whole body, so all of your sensations, you've got movement, you've got different temperatures, you've got all of these different things which combine to kind of leading to ideas. So this is quite an interesting dynamic really between that kind of rational and intuitive aspects of ourselves, which we need both, but I like that. So I haven't had a look at some of the answers.
Yeah, run on a run or in the allotment, walking by the sea, having a bath. That's a good one as well. So yeah, and it's and so Ben, are we doing ourselves a disservice then by being connected to our devices all the time?
So there's a couple of points to make on this slide. So there's the devices which connects from the kind of shower principle, that actually with devices, just the way that they've been designed, basically draw in our kind of really narrow focus, and distracted focus as well. And they're kind of they're not great for allowing our minds to expand the way that they've been designed. They can, if we use them intentionally, and there are great aspects to technology, but there's always trade-offs. And I think that they are a technology of civilization, where animals and humans have basically had our brains shrunk. And there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that when we get stuck in familiar patterns and routines and comfort, that actually our brains suffer, and they both shrink, but also they become less flexible, less open to kind of new situations. And I think just the quote here is that our brains just weren't, and our guts the same. It's just we weren't designed for this environment, this way of living, and all of the problems which we've got from a health perspective are all point to this, that actually just modern life, be it the technology, be it the food, be it everything else, is problematic. And so this is kind of one of the challenges which we have with gut instinct, is that our stomachs are incredibly unhealthy. So we've got huge amounts of IBS, and I've gone through quite a few years of problems with my stomach. That there's anxiety and ill health in our stomach because of the processed food, because of our unhealthy environments, are also giving out signals and also giving out kind of gut instincts, which could be mistaken for anxiety as well. So that's kind of one aspect there. But we've also got this what's called a Dunning-Kruger effect, and you can't really see it very clearly, but there's the kind of line down the middle. And again, this is another comparison between our left and right hemisphere, that the left hemisphere, if we rely on it, it has a weird effect. So the less it knows, the more it thinks it knows, because it's looking at a very small arc of our world, and the more we know about that small arc, the more certain, more able we are to control it, and so we get more confident. Whereas our right hemisphere is more, because it's more in tune with the subconscious, our whole body, the entire environment around us. It's a bit more like the devil's advocate. And so it works in a different way, that actually the more it knows, the more it recognizes how little it knows. And so, there's a difference there. And so, the kind of gut instincts like anxiety could play into either one of these. And so if we've got a tendency to rely on our left hemisphere or our right hemisphere, it might give off different signals. So I think that there's all these different interplays, really, which is worth considering.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Ben, finally, I just wanted to ask you about this lovely acronym of WEIRD, that we are all weird. What does that mean?
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about the brain, a little bit about the environment, how that kind of shapes how we think and feel. But this is about culture, and yeah, so Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, which a US professor called Joe Henrich coined. And so he did a lot of research. He basically noted that a lot of psychological studies were invariably done on these types of people. So we're all weird, in his language, but we make up only 12% of the global population. But in terms of psychological studies and research, we make up 95%. And so we have this inclination that everybody in the world behaves and thinks and feels like we do. But there's plenty of research which he's looked into which suggests that actually we don't. And so again, we kind of look through this left hemisphere on the left and right on and the right hemisphere on the right, that in the left we tend to think about, or we tend to look at people through achievements, through job roles, through seniority. We tend to engage, we've got pro-social behaviors, but we tend to do it through impersonal transactional strategies. So we do it through contracts, we kind of mediate experiences through technology. And we tend to be analytical thinkers. So this kind of builds on really the kind of slide from earlier in the savannah, where we're able to kind of isolate something out of context, and in the past it would have been food, but now it's like a number, or it's an individual, or it's something. And so we kind of analyze that, take it out of context, and it gives us power. But what we don't do is then kind of integrate it with the bigger picture or understand all of the different connecting points. And another aspect is that we tend to be more self-interested, we're more individualistic, etc. And this counters, this is different to other cultures which perhaps have a slightly more balanced relationship between the hemispheres, and there tends to be more of a focus on relationships. So actually who they are, what relationships they are, um, and they tend to be kind of more focused on personal local connections rather than kind of global transactions. And they tend to be more kind of holistic thinkers. And this is a kind of big generalization, but holistic thinking basically sees the broad context and sees how everything is connected, whether that's kind of nature, culture, people, work, rather than just creating endless silos of kind of concepts and ideas. And a lot of cultures are kind of interested really in the group. And so I think in the future we've got to try and find our own way forward, where actually we regain some sort of balance between these, because we need both, and both are important. And the image in the background, just to give some context, was an example of a study of this, where basically American and Japanese students were shown different images, and Americans predominantly talked about this image, which again, used to be a moving image, and they focused on the fish, on colors, on the size and shapes. So in the West, we tend to focus on objects, whereas in Japan, they talked about the context, how everything, the kind of overall picture. So described it as a scene, and described the kind of relationships between all the different components. So we look at the world and we see the world and we feel things through a cultural lens. We're almost biologically, genetically, so similar to the Japanese, but this cultural lens which we are schooled through shapes how we think and understand the world. So that's an important thing.
Yes, apologies for. Oh, it was a lovely slide with fish floating and all kinds
Very
of
sorry.
things. And I'm so sorry, Ben. I know just all your beautiful graphics. I've destroyed them. So apologies to everybody else as well. Right, so I think this would be a good time to have another look at a poll. And Sadie, could you pop our third poll up for us, please? Now you'll see that it is very similar to the last one, and we would just like to see if your ideas have changed, if they're still the same. Do you still think you can trust your gut reaction? Wow. Oh gosh, that was the first one. So look at this. Oh, brilliant. I say that and I forget that you guys can't see it yet, but I can. It's great. Okay, that is great. There's a couple more to come in, but look at this. Right. Amazing. Interesting. Really, yeah. I mean, there's just on it like a cup. Yeah, that's incredible. So, what do you take from that, Ben? What do you feel?
No, I think that well, I'm glad there's no no's, because we have all of these instincts and these feelings and these different ways of knowing, which are all important. There is an evolutionary purpose to them, and I can't speak for everybody. And I think that I put down sometimes. I think my experience of having lots of stomach problems, and I think just my kind of perspective is that I tend to have good gut instincts in certain situations, and kind of my mood and health and everything else does influence my kind of gut instincts, but it's part of the for me it's part of the picture. My kind of my feelings, my gut, and I think an important thing to distinguish is we talk about gut instincts and feelings and intuition. It's interchangeable. Maybe kind of gut instinct is that kind of physical sense, and intuition is more that kind of subtle I know, which is perhaps less kind of visceral and kind of felt in the gut, but it's a kind of similar thing that actually you kind of know, and it's difficult to explain. And the more that more that you're familiar with yourself and how you come to decisions, the more that you can kind of trust that sensation, whether that's a physical reaction or whether that's
Mm.
just I think I know this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Oh, please, our chance to ask questions or to share your thoughts. This is an open forum. So yeah, please come in. Have you ever I don't know. I don't want to pop your question. Right. Okay, Derek, let's have a look at your comment on chat. My 10 cents. Time and again, I find myself with incomplete information. And the best next step is to gather a more complete picture and then go with the gut based on an than go with the gut on an incomplete picture. I understand that one, Derek. We kind of sometimes want to validate. Kind of like get that supporting mechanism. That's brilliant. Yeah, I can agree with that one. And Ben, is that something that we are our culture encourages? Do you think that because of that rationalization?
Yeah, we tend to have we can also get stuck in analysis paralysis,
Mm,
can't we, as well? So um, I think that it is important to, and we've got to understand that the savannah versus the 21st century is very, very different. And we've developed these kind of new like abilities, you know, to as an upgrade, but we kind of need to basically to Derek's point, we kind of need to um, have a kind of more complete picture. But how we
mm,
go about that is different. And some people just are kind of better feelers, more kind of instinctual. And I kind of feel that I another part of ADHD is impulsivity. And impulsivity is seen as something which is negative, but you can train impulsivity to um, you know use it for entrepreneurial
mhm,
sort of capabilities. And just being stuck going round and round in circles trying to rationalize and analyze things is not good either. And so everybody has kind of unique capabilities, and it's all about self-knowledge. It's all about kind
mm.
of understanding who you are, and what your skill sets are, and what your kind of slight biases are, and learning from experience. And this is always just learning, isn't it? It's not just saying, okay, well, I've had that one instinct, I'm just going to do that for the rest of my life. It's how do we just constantly refine it and keep it in the mix.
Brilliant. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Ben. Yes, John has said, you've often regretted not going with your gut instinct when you should have done. I know, yeah, I think many of us can relate to that. And it's, was that about validation, John? Was it about kind of like, oh, yeah, maybe concern for the reaction? It is an interesting one. That's right. Carolyn has said, I find that in most circumstances, my gut feel is right, but I don't always like what it tells me. That is interesting. Absolutely. We're kind of like, I know this is right, but it might not suit others. And then I guess we get to that people pleasing area as well. It's just, is this going to go down well with us? Is that something that we can look at, Ben? Is that something of is that a personal thing, do you think?
um yeah, well, I think that we again we kind of live in quite a complicated you know world. There's lots of interdependencies. Our decisions which we make have many knock-on effects and trade-offs quite often. So it's how and where and when do we kind of use these instincts, but then kind of understanding what are the trade-offs. And in general, we're not very good. We're very good at analyzing, but we're not very good at seeing all of the connections and trade-offs and consequences which might come from these actions. So um, yeah, and it's complicated. We just don't live in a world which encourages us to switch off, to
That's
spend
right.
time to spend time with um, our bodies,
Mm.
and reflect, and to quite just we just don't get that.
Mm.
And so there is this kind of challenge that, you know, if we did do more of that, we would have, you know, better, clearer minds, but we would also have probably um, kind of more precise instincts as well. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I think the whole mindfulness and meditation and breathing and everything else which we're doing, you know, kind of will help. But, you know, we kind of really as a culture need to try and maybe encourage this and create the space and privacy and yeah, to do that, because it's a vital part of how we make decisions, and
Mm.
you know, how we navigate through life. And um, yeah, just kind of analytical thought. And you know, a chaotic mind is not great for a lot of people right now.
No, indeed, absolutely, and that's brilliant. I mean, Claire supports that very much with the her message in the chat says that with her coaching client with her coaching practice, she takes her clients into their body to tap into and listen to their gut and heart. There is benefit in quietening the mind, sometimes to bring about change, which is very much in support of what you were saying, Claire. Nikki said that she's found when making decisions there are three factors: follow your head, follow head, heart, and gut. In her experience, the gut has always been right, although not always easy to identify. Absolutely brilliant. And so I wonder, Nikki, if you have found yourself actually giving yourself a little bit more time to identify that sometimes. It's and I think time is our most precious thing at the moment, isn't it? We're so busy, we're so rushed, and just taking that time out to rely on our bodies. And Ben, do you identify certain, whether it be industries or age groups, that are better at getting in tune with their guts than others?
I don't know if I would look at it from industries point. I guess there's, you know, I think that I think people that coach are, you know, more likely to be in tune with you know, our kind of the relationship between our bodies and minds and environmental contexts. Um, yeah, I think that again, I think it's more a kind of cultural, you know, cultural lens, which is kind of more important versus industry. But you know, maybe I'm not, yeah, maybe I'm not thinking kind of clearly enough. You know, I think that the kind of the tech industry, you know, feels very, you know, prefrontal cortex.
Mm,
Um, the, you know, the finance industry again, it's kind of very kind of, you know, prefrontal kind of cortex. And so there's industries where, you know, and you know, any kind of bureaucracy is, yeah, and we've just kind of got, you know, huge layers and layers of that. Again, is kind of our kind of left hemisphere analytical thought, and that's a massive. If just you know, financial services, tech, and bureaucracy, that's a huge part of, you know,
mm,
our kind of nation, our nation. And it's not just those industries. We all have to intersect, whether we're doing our kind of tax returns or, you know, we're signing up to apps and whatnot. So we're kind of basically becoming more and more enmeshed in this kind of non-embodied virtual, you know, kind of world. And so there is, yeah, that's a concern. That's a
mm.
concern for me. And you know, maybe kind of with you know, kind of new community practices, new types of education, with, you know, more kind of coaching and mentoring. Maybe this is kind of bottom up kind of change which
Yeah.
will come. And you know, I kind of see that you know, rather than, you know, maybe whole industries, it's more how we go about bringing kind of change in all of the kind of industries, where maybe things become little bit more kind of local, a little bit more sustainable, a little bit kind of more about kind of, you know, size, where kind of small is better. And so there's kind
Absolutely.
of, hopefully there's these kind of, you know, different things where actually we need this kind of top-down, kind of left hemisphere view, but also we need this kind of combination of bottom up, change from the ground, local, small scale, sustainable, real. And so it's trying to find that kind of harmony. And again, it's trying to find that harmony between our kind of, our ability to have a rational mind, but also our ability to kind of feel and sense as well. And it's kind of all about relationships and balance and integration and synthesizing. It's not one or the other. It's, how do we get the best of both?
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Nikki's followed up and said that she has drawn many lists to make decisions in her time. But again, although pros may outweigh the cons, following your head logical decisions, ultimately for Nikki, the decision was wrong and I should have followed my gut instinct. Oh, wow, look at that. So I think what Ben's message is to us, if I can be so bold, is to say, let's take some time. Let's take some time for ourselves. And I think we have got people on the call that are coaching, and I know that we encourage managers to learn how to coach, and also mindfulness practices as well. So please, are there any other questions? Because we are so on time. This is just like fabulous. It's just amazingly brilliant on time. So I don't know if anybody's got a question for Ben, or if you'd like to share anything further. But if not, then we might wrap up and say thank you for your time this morning. We will be sending through a little website link for you to, please, if you could provide some feedback for us. We'll do that via Sadie. We'd like to know what you found useful, and if you have an interesting topic, if you've got a question like the one that we've addressed today, like a challenging one, or one that goes, oh, makes you think, kind of like, wow, I'm not too sure on that one, do let us know, because the Inspiring Women's Network is exactly where we want to address those kind of topics, and see how we can help ourselves and everybody else as we move. So please, thank you for your comments. That's great, and have a fantastic day, and try and take some time out for yourself so you can think about those gut reactions. And thank you to Ben. Thank you very much indeed, Ben. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah, take care, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank
you, Ben. Thank you.